All right. Well, welcome to Monday morning and coffee talk. This one is going to be a little shorter than normal. There wasn't as much to talk about that happened this past week. So we are going to throw a little bit of extra in there, or as my friends in Louisiana like to say, a little bit of lagniappe at the end. And we're going to talk about constructive total losses. So if you want to learn about what an insurance company deems or why they call something a constructive total, we'll make sure you stay to the end today. Well, let's kick it off with something that's actually going on in my backyard. Something that I've got to go probably as soon as this is done. I think about 9 or 10 o'clock this morning. I've got to take a trip up to the Capitol, which hopefully there's nothing that's barring me from coming in. I don't believe there's any outstanding issues. Maybe I should call before I go. All right. Well, in the world of dumb crap that seems to be continue to happen around automotive claims and automotive repairs and collision repair and all that, this one hits deep in the home state. And what's interesting is that nobody in the whole entire state of Arkansas seemed to know that this one was happening until Friday afternoon, after this thing had got out of the House and been passed by the House and now heads into the Senate for final vote today. Interesting thing, I guess, for all of us that anybody, what was the little Schoolhouse Rock, so God, I love that. Schoolhouse Rock is amazing. But once it leaves the House, there isn't really any more hearings or speaking to or talking about the bill. So that time seems to have left us where we're going to be able to, I guess, have any common sense discussion about this one. It's very rare that something comes up that myself and the lobbyist and attorneys for the insurance companies are in agreement on. So this may be a day to go buy a lottery ticket as well. I may peel off by the gas station on my way either there or home and go, this is one of those weird, once in a million days. Obviously, this bill, and I haven't researched this Senator Johnson or Representative Kavanaugh, but I will be researching you, and we will see each other shortly. So just prepare yourself. I have a feeling one of them owns a tote the note style car lot. That's typically where these bills come from. They're not kind of in common. Maryland has something that's sort of like this, but not as stupid. And so that's they. But this is probably a tote the note kind of place. Basically, this bill says any and all auto claims. So those are going to be glass claims. Those will be collision repair, comp and collision. That'll be cat claims. That'll be anything, any claim, auto claim now has to be made payable to the customer and the lien, because remember, an insurance company has to indemnify the policyholder or the wronged party, unless there is some sort of agreement to direct pay somebody, such as a body shop or a car rental agency. I can't play enterprise. I think that's what people are not really looking for, because it basically says, if you read this, it will require an insurer to include a lien holder on payments made under an insurance policy. Huh. So in this title, a lien holder must be included on all payment of insurance proceeds. If an insured or third-party claimant makes a demand or files claim for damages under a motor vehicle, then either with an insurer or with a court of law, there is a perfected, meaning there is a proven lien holder for the automobile loan. The insurer shall tender payment in the name of the insured or third-party claimant and the lien holder. This section applies only to a lien holder that has a physical location in the state. Yeah, it gets dumber, right? So you can tell this is a tote the note place, that clearly something must have happened. They must have maybe a third party liability where the consumer was paid and they just took the money and ran, and they maybe had to repossess this car later or whatever. But the problem is it basically says all payments made, first party, third party, if there's a lien holder that has an office or a physical location in the state of Arkansas, then the lien holder's got to be on the payment. Folks, that's enterprise rent-a-car. That's going to be any third party tow. So let's say you're going to pay a tow, or you're going to pay benefits of the tow. I can't pay Copart, because if it's any benefit under the physical, there's the cost, there's loss cost, and there's loss adjustment cost. But I'm reading this and I'm thinking it doesn't give me the ability to do that either. So that's a problem. I'm like, can you imagine enterprise having to get a lien holder to sign off on the rental check? This also means under DRP agreements, no EFTs. So if you're a shop that's been living, I don't want to say living off of it, but you enjoy the benefit of direct deposit, and that allows you to deliver cars faster and whatever that is, no more EFTs, no period, because it'll be no more EFT to consumers either. So there'll be no direct paying consumers on lower level losses, like shows up in your bank account. EFTs are done. This is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever read. So leave it to Arkansas to do this. Now, the thing about it is when this first got sent to me and people were like, yeah, but Kristen, it's only for lien holders that are in Arkansas. I'm like, well, that's problematic anyway. I mean, because think about it. We've got Bank of America and Regions Bank and all the banks that typically do this. If you've gotten a loan through an insurance company like State Farm Bank or whatever, or any of those, well, then that would have an office here. But a little problem about Arkansas is we have a little company in that northwestern corner of our state called Walmart. And the problem or the benefit of Walmart to our economy in the state is that if you want to do business with Walmart, and I want to preference that as do business. So if you're going to do any business at all with a company of Walmart anywhere in the world, because Walmarts are, I mean, come on, they're kind of awesome. That's the whole people of Walmart account. If you're going to do business with Walmart, you have to have a physical location in the northeast corner or northwest corner of Arkansas. So up there around Bentonville, Fayetteville, all that. There's lots of little singular offices, right? Like every product that you can think of on the shelf, you got to have an office here. If you want to do any financial dealings with Walmart, you got to have an office here. OEs have offices in Arkansas because of Walmart. So to have that little caveat in there that says physical location, I'm pretty sure this Representative Kavanaugh or the Senator Johnson thought that was going to be the, hey, get out of jail free card for how it was only going to affect whatever car lot they're associated with. By the way, we had another representative in Arkansas that had a car lot up in that area, and he had that TV show like 27 Kids and Counting or whatever. That was another Arkansas show in a car lot. But I think that they just completely whiffed on the concept of what Walmart in Arkansas means. So everyone is converging on the Capitol here in Arkansas today. Hopefully trying to kill this where it stands. We had State Farm, God love them, jumped into action really quickly. Shout out, I do want to say thank you to Caliber. That's another thing you're probably never going to hear me say, right? This is like, hopefully, and this is recorded, so there's recorded evidence of me saying thank you to Caliber. But we were able to reach out to a couple of people and go, hey, you guys make phone calls that I can't make, and let's get some people, because this kills DRP, it kills EFT, it kills all of the things that make the cogs in the wheel go round and round. For about 60% of the reported claims end up going through a DRP style like process. So but everybody's going to converge up there today and see if they can get it stopped. We had a bunch of State Farm agents calling body shops across the state on Friday. States were calling their representatives and got some of them on the phone that had voted for this in the House. And they were like, no one explained that to us. And I go, well, no shit. No one explained that to you, right? Like maybe make a phone call before we vote on something and do a little research. That would be great. But this one's kind of a killer. So I thought as dumb bills, like I've been hard on the associations and some stuff lately for some things that they're putting out there, but that dumb stuff happens in Arkansas too. So I will hopefully update everybody on what happens, but I'm confident that the right parties with the right amount of money and the right lobbyist will be converging on the Capitol, and my skills, nor the few collision shops that are meeting me up there today, our skills will not be needed. We'll just probably sit in a corner with a bucket of popcorn and a soda and just watch everything happen and unfold. So should be very interesting. All right, what's next? Well, you saw this one get posted. This only applies if you're in the National Glass Program for State Farm. So those are glass shops. I think some of the DRPs are kind of part of the glass program. most of the national DRPs also own glass companies, so that's kind of interesting there. But this new way of handling OEM glass, if you want something messed up pretty quickly, just leave it to Lynx and let Lynx form an opinion. I've been getting a lot of glass complaints lately. This year I did this year was 2024. I did the auto glass show, and got to talking to a lot more glass people. But I'm getting way more glass complaints from consumers, which is weird. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if glass claims work the way they work, because they were typically frictionless claims. You broke a windshield, you need a windshield, go put a windshield in the car, or you need a chip repair or whatever. So they didn't really require, I would say, a lot of claims or investigation skills or any of that. It was pretty much a transaction based type thing. A lot of agents handled glass claims directly. It was, so having a third party like Lynx or whatever get involved with glass typically wasn't a big deal. But like everything, technology has changed, and glass claims are now fraught with liability and failures and ADAS, and there's a lot that can go wrong besides just not installing the glass properly, which if you do that, that's a problem as well, right? Like, because glass is considered a structural, it has some structural tendencies to it. It's fixed glass, right? But this is going to be an interesting philosophy. It appears as though what State Farm is asking the glass shops to do is to not install the OE glass, install the aftermarket glass, then provide a failed calibration report and submit the failed report as proof of purchase of the other glass, and then get the OE glass. And it's just like wasteful money. And people always go, do they really want us to spend that? No, they don't want you to buy, and they don't want to buy two pieces of glass either. The real fear, or I don't want to say fear, because it's my fear, it's not their fear. The real feeling here is that no one will want to go through this. And so they'll just figure out a way to make the calibration work. And that's typically what happens when an insurer puts a rule in place, whether it's around a DRP or whether it's around something like this, or we run into those rules all the time where they're like, well, you got to take the part off first and prove it's going to break, and then we only want to pay. But all these rules, and the intent is to make it so difficult to get what you need that you just decide to say forget it. There was a pretty interesting study we had done before I left the insurance industry about establishing what was the quit point. At what point would a shop just say screw it, and they would write it off? $250, by the way, was where we got on that. That if you just kept doing the supplement process, that you decided that $250 wasn't enough money to worry about the hassle of whatever. I always tell people the story. I remember it very vividly to this day. I was probably 10 years old, and my dad gets in a fight with an Allstate adjuster over a $5 supplement. And the adjuster basically told my dad that it was frivolous and it was a waste of his time, and he was worth more than having to deal with a $5 supplement. My dad's temper was about like mine, and and I remember the very choice words in discussion that was there were basically, I'm owed the $5, pay me the $5, right? I'm not going to eat $5 on every claim that comes in here. By the time we get to the end of the year, that will have been $15,000-$20,000. So but this just seems to me like it's another way of putting more hurdles in place to the proper repair, so that more people will just give up and move on. Whether that's their tooling isn't right. I mean, because we still have people in the glass shops running around and using lots of aftermarket tooling and targets that are not approved by the OE. And so it's a fraught process to begin with. But this is an interesting one. The glass people are interested in this one, and there's been a lot of good conversations around. I just think this, at some point, insurers, I need you to stop listening to vendors. That can be CCC, it can be Lynx, it can be whatever. Stop listening to vendors who make money off of you coming and telling you what you need to do to handle your claims better. Like, the only person that knows how to handle your customers, take care of your customers, care for them, love them, all of the things that we need to do for our policy, that's you. So start setting your own standards for how you're going to handle things, and not necessarily worrying so much about a vendor who adds another layer of complexity or a hurdle that prevents a customer from getting the absolute best service, best repair, best quality that they can from you. So that's about all we're going to say on that. All right, this one's funny. I continue to get updates shared, or I get tagged in these grade A parts. So there's been a lot of changes to parts recently within the estimating systems, particularly for you DRP shops that signed up for this garbage. So those vendors, as they are somewhat force fed to you through a program, have become just crazy. Like, I'm getting pictures of something that's, here's the address of its part store, and we pull it up on Google Maps, and it's like an ice cream shop slash bodega slash what. Like, one was a trailer park in a field with overgrown grass. One was an empty lot that popped up. Like, it's just like, I don't know what it takes to become a listed part vendor to have an inventory pushed out to these shops, but whatever it is, it has. I don't want to say that it was ever good, but I believe it was better when there was local. So you had local management in states and in markets, and then you had the shops picking the vendors. Like, that we were better, right? We could have an honest. This is the crap that keeps showing. This is a grade A perfect part according to the estimating system, and this is what shows up. So for you adjusters and insurance companies out there, that's a non-usable part. Even if it wasn't cracked this bad, when you look at all of I think it's been left out in the rain, somewhere on a dirt gravel floor for maybe a year or so before somebody threw it in the back of a truck and tried to like ship it off to the shop. It would have had to have a new emblem. That's not usable. Trying to prep this part to then spray to match, and you look at all of the little louvers and the little areas of this, and then we have to think about millage and what we can and can't do around sensors and stuff these days. When you hear a shop talking about why a used part isn't usable, why it's not a good idea for the repair, it's not that they just want to buy OE parts, right? Like, some of the OE discount is not what it used to be. There are some cases to be made that a shop can even make a better margin on an alternative part than they can on an OE part. That's not the issue. The issue is that it's just not a good repair. By the time you add all the additional labor, if the part's usable at all, this part's going back, screw it. Think of how much time we've wasted on this claim, how much rental we've burned, how much goodwill we've taken away from the customer. We waited on this crap part to come in. Now it's not usable. We got to take pictures and prove it. Now we got to send it back. We got to wait for somebody on the other side of the abyss of the black hole of claims death to return a call to go, okay, yeah, we'll finally authorize the OE. Or worse yet, you get them to call you back and they're like, hey, we found another used one. Well, shit, let's not play this game again, right? Like, we waited for this one. All of the money that's just being wasted. We want to reduce severity. Like, that's something that insurance companies and adjusters need to be cognizant of. That's part of their job. But we're wasting money. We're throwing away hundreds of dollars on every claim by trying to save 10 or 15 bucks on a part. Like, it just gets dumb after a while, right? And if you have places that are not calling you back and complaining about the parts they're getting, that needs to scare you more than the shops that are calling you back and complaining. Because the shops that aren't are just taking something that's not worth a damn, throwing it on the car and sending it down the road and going, not my circus, not my monkey. And then that's that. What do we owe the customer? Like, what do we owe the customer business wise, legally? But then what do we morally owe the customer, right? Like, you want to sleep at night. You want to put your head on the pillow and feel like you did a good job that day. So just be aware that if this uptick in claims and or complaints on used parts is really real, it's the worst I've ever seen it. And I've been to some, it's a nice way of putting it. I've been to some nicer salvage yards, like maybe the ones that are certified through like URG, is that Universal Recycles Group or whatever. I've been to some nicer ones. They still don't take care of parts the way like I would want them to take care of parts, but they're really good at grading their parts, and then they're really good at storing and protecting them and whatever. And those people are being listed as grade A for all the work that they do, while the people with the trailer park in the middle of the field that hasn't been mowed in 15 years is listed as the same level of supplier, or a grade A supplier. So insurers, clean up your list or stop using the parts. And that may be because you've gone with a vendor instead of taking ownership of it. So there's this new mentality in the insurance world that you can delegate behavior and claims to shops. I'm going to hire, CCC says they can do this, and Enterprise says they can do this, and what, and I'm over here basically feeling like I'm not guilty of anything because I've delegated these things out to these vendors to handle. Well, maybe get a hold of your estimating vendor and have them sort of audit and clean up the list. So if this is going to be pushed out to shops and you want to look a customer, because none of you look customers, walk out and look a customer in the eye, maybe get out from behind your desk and go look customers in the eye, but clean up the list. And if that vendor can't clean up the list, well, then get rid of them, right? Give it back to the shops. Let the shops pick local vendors and people that they know, the way we did it all those years ago. It's still, I find it funny that all of these things, I was reading a report the other day. If you haven't seen, Mike Anderson's got a podcast thing that he's doing, and he was releasing some numbers on severity and some stuff across the country. But I find it very interesting that we're in 2025 and alternative parts usage versus OEM is really still about the same percentage as it was in the 90s. I think if we pulled reports, we'd find about 80% of parts used in collision repair are new OE, and about 20% are alternative, with a mix between aftermarket and LKQ. So all of this stuff that's being done, and we're still right where we are statistically. So give the power back to the shops. If the shop agreed to be on your program and they've agreed to use alternative parts, at least give them the honor and trust of picking the vendors that they want to use. Now, I'll come back behind them and I'll be on their tail for choosing a bad part or not doing a proper repair and following the OE and all those things. But this garbage is just pathetic. And it's every week I get tons of these pictures sent to me, and it's always a grade A part and always lots of good things. And then when you return enough parts because the parts are this bad, that you get rewarded with getting cut off and no one will show you parts anymore. And then the insurer wants to tell you that that's your problem. All right. What else happened this week? Well, I was getting tagged and I was getting a lot of pictures coming from BMW had their certified collision repair conference. The certified shops from across the country for BMW get to go in a really nice place in California. I think it was in Palm Springs this year, and they get to have a good time for a couple of days. It's a very nice event. No expenses spared on it, and I don't know if that sponsor's paying that or how that works out, but it's a great event. And then this slide from the conference got posted everywhere. So this was not a private message. I'm not violating anybody here. This was up in public of what the slide was. And if you read that slide, it basically says, to meet the repair standards required of BMW certified collision repair centers, the use of only new original BMW mini parts is required during collision repairs. So I made a little statement online that I was like, I wonder how many certified shops there are that are actually also DRPs, and will they be getting off their DRPs? And this becomes kind of a legal nightmare for body shops. I believe it's also a legal nightmare for the OE2, and we'll explain that one as well. But it becomes a legal nightmare for the body shops because you can't please two masters. So you can't sign up for this program and say that you're only going to use original parts, but then also have a DRP agreement that says you're going to use alternative parts on the claims that come in that happen to be assigned to you through that insurer. Now, when insurers went and added certified insignia to their DRP locator, so you can go on some insurance companies' DRP programs on their websites, and besides just using a locator that says, hey, here's my zip code, show me the shops that are next to me, you can actually ask it, do you want to see certified shops for particular brands? Okay, insurers, you stepped in it, you went there, congratulations. You thought it was great, you thought it was going to be a service to your customers, and you shops ate it up. This is great. I'm a certified Nissan shop, and State Farm's going to promote me to their customers as being a certified form of repair. You just stepped in the biggest lawsuit of your life, because there's no way you can serve two masters. This is a case. So the box, again, for our friends at Aztec that can't read or understand slides. This is an excerpt from a story. It's on Repair Driven News. This is a case that Larry Montanez and Mike Anderson were involved in Ohio. This happens all the time. I grabbed this excerpt because you can research this in Repair Driven News for yourself, because people are like, show me the case. Like, do I look like your attorney? For $300 an hour, I will research and show you a case. But so I chose this one because you can just go to Repair Driven News and research it, and then you hit a hot link in the story, and it will take you to the case so that you can read it and read everything that the judge said and everything about the verdict. But in this case, it was an $8,000 repair to the back of a Nissan, simple car, put on a rear body panel. And in addition to losing, the body shop lost. It was a crap repair. It's really bad. The pictures are up there. You can see Larry did a great job of pointing out everything that was wrong with that repair. But apparently rear body panels aren't supposed to be held on with seam sealer. Who knew, right? But in the case, in addition to losing the $8,000, which was the cost of the estimate with which the insurance company paid this shop, they lost over $100,000 in treble damages and attorney fees. So, and what did the jury say? And this is very, very important for every shop. And if you've had any sort of like the basics of claims, or you've done anything, we talk about Good Samaritan laws, and what those are is most states issued protections for Good Samaritans, particularly doctors. So if I was a doctor and I had a person that was on a plane with me and they suddenly couldn't breathe or did whatever, and I want to give aid. The way it happened before we had these Good Samaritan laws was that I was held to a greater standard because I knew more, right? I was a doctor. So I was not your just typical person in the plane who happened to be on this flight, rendering aid to somebody. So basically, like Maya Angelou always says, when you know better, do better. So kind of the same thing, that you're a doctor, you should know better. So the duty of care or the services that you render to this person in aid should be of a deeper standard. And if you screw up, we're going to sue you, right? So to protect people from doing that, these Good Samaritan laws passed. Okay, great. Those don't apply in collision repair. And so here's why. When juries are asked to give a verdict, so a body shop is being sued for something, whether in this case, there was no injury, no death, no nothing. This was just a bad repair. Imagine if there had been injury, death, or something else on top of it. But what the jury said is that the body shop, could be you if you're listening, definitely you if you're one of these OE certified repair centers, and definitely you if you are a DRP. So if you're OE certified, if you're a DRP, pay attention to what this jury said, because I hear it about every other month on cases that come out. The body shop represented to consumers that it performed all repairs to automotive specifications with the intent to restore vehicles to their pre-loss conditions. Got that? So basically, you're advertising to consumers that you're going to fix the car to specifications that are going to get it back to the way it was before, relative safety, function, performance, appearance, and those kind of things. But that you're going to do a good job. Okay. And its technicians were trained and certified in the latest automotive advancements. So if you've got that iCar plaque, or you've got the plaques hanging in your front office that says Johnny went to X BMW, let's say it's BMW, went to BMW's training and is certified in welding or any of those things, or if you've got everybody's iCar Platinums or whatever hanging in your office, you've said that your technicians are trained and they know better. So now we're back to Maya Angelou. If you know better, you better do better. It also represented that it had gold class certification by iCar, a recognized industry training organization, and that it repaired vehicles according to iCar guidelines. Now, for those of you that aren't real familiar, ICAR's guidelines say follow the OE. The uniform, what was it? The uniform codes of or procedures of collision, or the UCPRs, or whatever ICAR used to have about 15 years ago. They said, hey, those generical collision things no longer apply. You got to follow the OE. You got to read the manual. You got to know what substrates you're working on. You got to know everything. And ICAR screamed this from the top of the mountain as high and as loud as they can. And I don't know how we still keep getting this one wrong, but ICAR says follow the OE. Okay, awesome. So in this case, they basically said, look, you're trained, you're certified, you had no business putting out this kind of repair. So in other words, your training becomes your Achilles heel, which then became the guilty, which became you're given back the $8,000 you were paid to do the job in the first place, plus treble damages, plus attorney's fees, and it adds up quickly. So if you're going to say that you're going to be an OE certified collision center and you're going to agree to this, and then the first time you don't follow it, so let's say you agree that you're only going to use, okay, I'm BMW certified, I'm only going to use original parts. And then the first time a vehicle is found that you don't do that on, you don't get to go to court and say that, well, we didn't do that because that's a State Farm car or that's an Allstate car, and that particular customer didn't have an OE endorsement, and we're on the DRP program, and that's what we had to do. It says the use of only new original BMW Mini parts is required. Doesn't say recommended. You remember when you guys were asking for the OEs not to say recommended, to say required? You got your wish because it says required, right? Now, what does this mean to the OE? So I always tell the OE, I said, this sounds cute, right? You write this statement, you put it out, you're feeling pretty good about yourselves. You guys high five each other in the office and you walk around. But here's the problem. A lot of the OEs also require that the shops upload estimates in certain ways so that the OE can review them. Now, what the OE is really looking for is part sales. They're tracking parts dollars. Sometimes people like to take credit for part sales. In the OE world, money's king, right? like that's really how much money are we making off of this or whatever. Now, if you're having estimates sent into you for whatever reason, I don't care, wherever you're having them, but then that means you should know who's doing a good job and who's not. You should know who's using parts and who's not. You should know who's not writing estimates per the OE standards and who's not. You should know who's not scanning cars. And you should know all these things. So when a shop messes up a customer's car and there is injury or death, then one of the first things a good plaintiff attorney is going to look at, because do I want to sue Bob's Collision or do I want to sue the OE, is going to be, what did the OE know? And you should know whatever information you're asking for. So if you're asking for estimates to be uploaded, then just by looking at those estimates, that no one's doing a good job. You know that the shops that are on your certified program, but that are also DRPs, are not doing all the repairs and inspections after a collision. They're not doing all the safety inspections. They're not doing everything that they're supposed to do. They're not on the estimate. They're not doing it. So but you continue to let that shop carry the badge, carry your name, and do all things. And so this is interesting for shops. While these things come up and you start to think this is great and this is going to raise the bar and do whatever, you also have to know that every time that bar raises, it raises on you, which is where the first stop of liability always is. Because we're going to go back to what in this Williams versus Sharon Woods case, what the jury said was the shop had been through all this training. They had been trained by the OE. They had a little plaque on their door. They had all these things. They should have been a higher standard. They should not have been market standard. You know better. You should do better. So as these things continue to evolve, you've always heard me say, people, I don't think there's any value in OE certified, in having OE certification anymore, because there's too many limits. And then we have, like the statement General Motors put out that said, hey, if it's a GM insurance car, we want this to be done with it. It's just a lot of liability for shops. And there are some parts restricted collision programs that are pretty good, that can bring you work and can do some things, but you just need to be very, very aware of what you're agreeing to. I found this one interesting, so we'll see. I know there's a few shops that I'm curious to know is BMW now going to go back and tell every one of their shops, hey, you can't be DRP, because the DRP agreement says you're gonna use alternative parts, but our rules say you can't do them. So you're gonna have to choose one of us, but you can't do both of us. And I'll be, if BMW does that, I will have high respect for them. If the first OE that puts out a no DRP stance would be awesome. That would just be, we'll see. And not because DRP is terrible or independent shops fix cars better or whatever, but you just can't serve two masters. You just can't. So speaking of OEs and people I like to pick on, let's go back to picking on Tesla. This story was last week or maybe the week before, and I just didn't make it. But more drama around the Tesla, around the Cybertruck. This one is interesting. Basically, the customer, it went into what they call brick mode. Customers in it, everything dies, nothing works. The guy had to get out of it by using this manual eject handle thing. I'm assuming it's probably like the trunk thing when you get locked in the trunk that people have. But he had to use the manual, ejection to get out of the car. And here, it's not been in a wreck. He's not had an accident or anything in it, but just the thought of this guy trapped in this vehicle, because it's all electric and now he can't get out of it and nothing's working and whatever. And so Tesla can't figure out what's wrong with it. And then after about a month or two, Tesla flies in this special technical team. And now the special technical team of engineers can't even figure out what's wrong with the truck. At the time that I read through the article, it's been about 3 or 4 months. The guy still doesn't have, Tesla's not offering to buy him another vehicle. He's exploring whether it's a lemon law thing or whatever. Some of these people on these Tesla trucks, as we made fun of it maybe last month. The guy was like $100,000 upside down on his loan, but some of these people way overpaid for these vehicles when they to first get them. And so that's a very interesting situation to see what this guy's going to be in. But it just brings up, we always talk about liability and do you want to assume? And I think, God, if there's a vehicle running around there that just keeps having all these problems and all of these engineers keep coming in and they can't even they design the damn thing and they can't figure out what's wrong with it. What happens if I touch that? Like, it gets in a collision, comes in the shop, and then this happens afterwards. Where would they have laid all the blame? And then would I, of the shop, been having this customer look at me going, well, it's clearly something you did because the Tesla engineers can't figure it out. And oh, by the way, I owe $174,000 on a $75,000 vehicle, and I expect you to make me whole. Just some interesting things that are happening. And I just kind of go, well, I don't want that liability. I wouldn't touch those cars. And if I was going to touch those cars, I'd be sitting down with my insurance agent and reading through my policy and going, well, what happens if this happens, particularly since this vehicle right now seems to be so overfinanced. It's not something Gap covers. And people go, well, you got Gap insurance. Sometimes Gap has a percentage. So if you're that far overfinanced, I guess we'll just say that there's even a Gap policy, probably wouldn't even help with that. So definitely something, especially if I was Tesla, I'd be, trying to figure this one out. I'm going to need some more caffeine greatly. All right. What we got going on next? Oh, looky. BOI is back. We've been talking, I feel like, what was it? Wayne's World, game on, game off, game on, game off. So it's back, and this is going to be it, folks. So there's a lot of people thinking, oh, when we change administrations, we won't have to worry about this anymore. But it is now back. You will have to do your reporting requirement. Your deadline is March 21st. Hopefully you did what we told you to do in December, which is go ahead and get these forms ready and get it all done. If you want to go ahead and submit it, great. If you wanted to wait, at least you'll have everything gathered and you won't be running up on a deadline. For those people that told you were not going to have to file it, feel free to go find them and throw this in their face and tell them they were wrong. So it is back on for the 21st. That was an update. I think that was Wednesday. So February 19th, the federal government sent that one out. Please get with your accountant, your CPA, whoever does that for your business, and make sure that you fill out all the forms that are required. The fines are pretty steep. Should you misfile or miss the deadline. So make sure that you've got that one covered. And then boom, the one everybody wanted to talk about. What is a constructive total loss? So I had some time today. I was thinking, there's not much going on in the news. We got a little time. We'll cover it. And I had this question come in. It is a 2024 Volkswagen Atlas with 13,700 miles on it. The ACV is about 28,000. Did some digging. Yep, that's about right. I always tell people never trust what the estimating system says the ACV is. So I did some digging. The estimate, after this second supplement, total was 13,926. The shop said they felt confident that would be all there was, except for some part price differences maybe or whatever. It was a third party claim. And then we'll talk about what the duties are that you owe in a first party or a third party claim. Those are different duties there. So the shop's question was, hey, on inspection of the second and final supplement, final in the shop's mind, I want to be very clear on that. The second and final supplement, the adjuster wrote them back. This vehicle has been deemed a total loss on our side. Customer is now filing with their own insurance due to limit issue. And then the shop's question to me is, hey, this customer is upside down. They don't have any gap. They don't want to use their own insurance. What do we do? So there's a lot here to unpack. We talk about critical thinking a lot. So if you're in our C20 group for an insurance and customer relations, you're going to hear us talk critical thinking all the time. Instead of being reactive to the problem, which is where this shop was, how do I make them not total the car? My estimate's only 13. The car's worth 28. I was like, all right, well, let's look at this a little bit. So first of all, what's a constructive total loss? Can an insurer total a car anytime they want to? Technically, in a way, yes. So you'll hear us say all the time, yeah, I can total a car for $1 worth of damage, depending on what my duties are, right? First and third party, different duties. My job as an insurer is to choose the most cost-effective way to settle this claim. That may be repair, that may be total loss. In a third party, I have to look at everything. So I have the cost of repairs, I have the cost of the rental, I have a potential DV because this is a 2024. So I have to add all that up because the bucket of where my money is coming from the same place. So that's what a constructive total loss looks like. It's like, hey, this is the best thing over here for this bucket of money I have, which may be a limits issue, is to do X, Y, or Z. So we never just say, well, my estimate's only whatever. So there's in a first party, third party, there's different things there. We know this is a third party claim. We know that there's going to be the rental and there's going to potentially be a diminished value and some other things that are possible exposures there. When the adjuster says a limits issue, adjusters aren't necessarily, I don't want to say that, not that smart anymore. That's not fair, but they're just not trained that way anymore. So sometimes when an adjuster tells me it's a limits issue, I immediately think, oh, the policy has minimum limits. Maybe that's 15,000. So if you're in a state where the minimum limits are 15,000 on property, then that may be what they're saying. Sometimes the limit issue is just an adjuster reaches their limit. Which I'm finding, like, I only have authority of $15,000 in a file. Okay, let's get more authority, right? like I totally understand those things. So there's a few questions that has to be asked when there's a limits issue. If this is a state, so if the person that hit this Volkswagen has state minimum limits or has a low limit, maybe there's multiple cars involved. This may have been a 3-car or 4-car accident. It may just be more than one claimant on this. So we may have a limits issue. So we need to unpack that. Do you have to file with your own insurance? No, you don't have to. It's a tort, right? I can go sue the party or get the remainder of my balance from the person that hit me if they've got money to go for. So a lot of times what insurance will do if there is a limits issue or if there's multiple people involved is they'll tell you to go through your own carrier, because just go ahead and get your stuff taken care of. Because once everybody submits their claims and we know the total loss of the claim, then we can start divvying out the money that's there to be fair. We don't just pay the first person that comes in. And then when the second person comes, we go, we ran out of money. Sorry. That's not being a good fiduciary, right? So I'm not taking care of those things. So in this case, what would we do? Well, we know what the customer wants. My first question would be, do we have contact information for the at-fault party? So on a police report, do we have an address? Do we have a name? Do we have anything? I can ask, I don't want to use it that way. The customer can ask what the limits issue is, but perfectly willing to do that. A lot of times they'll tell you, hey, this is a minimum limits policy. It's got 15,000. You're already at 13.9 on the estimate. You're going to have a rental bill. You're possibly going to have a DV claim. I believe that this is going to exceed our limits. That may be the response you get back. You may get back, hey, this is a $15,000 limit. There's 2 other claimants. Yeah, you're already at 13.9. We definitely have a problem. Or they may not want to tell you. And so if you have the contact information for the party that hit them, I always say include them on correspondence, right? Like maybe you have their email, but if you don't, then you have to send that registered mail that just says your insurance carrier has made us aware that you may not have enough money on your policy to cover the damages. That's a way to get somebody to tell you what we're dealing with. If it's a $15,000 limit and you're at 13.9, yeah, going through your own carrier is going to make a big difference, right? Because that's going to get repaired. I don't believe the car is necessarily a total, right? But that may be where we need to go. If you're further away from whatever the limit is, let's say it's, I don't know, it's Arkansas 25. So it's 25,000 and we're at 13.9. There's only 1 car involved. We have some room to move. And you may want to seek an alternative settlement amount. For instance, okay, my estimate's 13.9. I believe the rental car is going to be 2, and I want 4 for my DV. And so if you'll pay X amount of dollars, I'll sign a full and final release and deal with the shop directly. Because remember, this is the customer that's got to sort this stuff out, not you. But a constructive total loss can happen when it is cheaper for the insurer to do X than to do Y when you add up. Now, if it's first party coverage, I can't throw in rental, but in third party, I can throw that in there. Salvage values are high right now. So if this thing's hitting the rear, obviously let's say it got rear-ended. If this thing's hitting the rear instead of the front, salvage value from rear impacts is greater than salvage value from front impacts for obvious reasons, right? So the salvage quote may be super high on this one. You may have a salvage quote that's like 30%. And then if I add that together, it makes more cost-effective sense to total a car. I can't necessarily just handle the claim a particular way because of the person has a bad loan or rolled over something else into it or whatever that has them upside down. So there's questions to ask, but you can deem a car a total loss. You want to walk through it. If it's a first party, or it's a third party and we're not even close to being where the limits are, and this is making no sense what they're doing it, then there is a secondary process in which the consumer makes the insurer aware of their duty, right? The duty is to make the person whole, so to speak, in a financial reasonable process. Like you got to be reasonable. You can't say, hey, I want to be made whole. Let's go back to our Tesla guy. It's worth 75, but he owes 174 on it. I'm never going to make that guy whole. That's not reasonable. But if the insurer's decision causes a huge financial detriment to the consumer for no real reason, which I get these sometimes, they're like, well, we're just totaling out everything that's at Bob's shop because we don't want to deal with Bob. Okay, that's cute. I don't want to deal with Bob either. I used to tell people, I don't want to deal with Larry Montanez either. Jesus, Mid-Island Collision, that's terrible. I would love to total every car that goes there, but I can't do that because my duty is not to Mid-Island Collision. My duty is to that customer. And so I got to handle that customer on this is my favorite, right? We handle claims individually and on their own merits. We don't make umbrella decisions that can negatively affect the consumer. So I've got to look at that each claim. Now, if I sit down and do the math based on what the feedback the insurer gives me on policy limits or whatever's going on, and I can make a case that the insurer is making a decision that makes no financial sense other than they don't want to deal with it, right? I have sometimes they'll go, we don't want to deal with this after dealing with the supplement. We don't want to handle it. So we're going to force them to go back through their own carrier. because then they'll have to use aftermarket parts or whatever we think is going to make it cheaper when we get this claim via subrogation versus when we pay it up front. I can't really do that. I'd want to do that. It makes a lot of sense, right? And you'll see right now with third parties, insurers doing everything they can to try to get that person to go through their own insurance and not pursue as a claimant, because a claimant gets so much more benefit. And most people, when they go through their own carrier, they forget to come back and ask for diminished value, particularly on repairables. So they think, well, I can't ask for anything because my insurance company paid for X. So in this case, my list back on critical thinking was, we need to figure out what the limits are. Is this a legit limits issue? Or is it a conceived or a contrived limits issue? Is the adjuster just scared of something that happens? Or is it at the adjusters? I only have $10,000 worth of authority. Most of the adjusters you guys deal with they have authority limits. They can't write checks for certain, more than that. And then I would want to know, do we have contact information for the at-fault party? Since this is a third-party claim, if the insured doesn't want to share too much information with you, which they don't have to, can we inspire that by reaching out to the person that actually legally owes all of these damages, right? Even if, let's say this total loss, let's say there's 15,000 in limits. And let's say by the time we pay for repairs, we pay for rental, and we factor in what the diminished value would be, the actual value of this customer's loss is $20,000. That $5,000 isn't just written off in space. So in other words, it's not like my insurance carrier is going to go, okay, I had 20,000, but you only have 15, so I'll take your 15 and we'll just write the other 5 off. That stuff goes to collection agencies that some of you are familiar with. Wilbur, right? You've had Wilbur writing you guys saying that you owe total loss fees back or whatever. That goes to those people, and then they seek to get that 5,000. They'll call those people and go, we'd like to set you up on a payment plan of $100 a month for the rest of your life, right? Nobody just writes that stuff off and lets it go. That's what subrogation units are for. That's what they're doing. So that customer is going to still, that at-fault party is still going to possibly be out of that pocket, that money that's over their policy limits anyway. It's better to get in on the front end than when you get one of those little collection letters in the mail, right? So that you know what's going on. But that's how a constructive total loss can work or cannot work. So there's a lot of questions that we need to get answered on what the insurer is thinking and why, and whether it's a limits issue or it's a salvage value issue. If they say it's for salvage value, then you want to ask for what's called a certified salvage bid. If I'm going to make a car constructive total, I have to have those numbers. So if I'm asked for them, I have to be able to explain. Let's say I'm gonna have to explain to a judge why we did what we did. A lot of the salvage, whether it's Copart or IA, will give you a certified salvage amount. They say, hey, we'll guarantee you that it would have gotten this much amount of money. And then I take that towards looking, and they're real easy for them to do. They just look at past sales of similar impacts and makes and models, and they go, yeah, this is about what it's going to sell for. And so it's legit. I've got some trucks. Remember there for a while, Ford Rangers and the little S10 pickup trucks. Man, the salvage value on those was insane. So it was, I mean, when a car got to about 50%, you were totaling that truck because it was cheaper to total it than it was to repair it. So lots of things to keep in mind there on constructive total losses. So just remember to go through your critical thinking tree. Don't get so caught up in thinking, my estimate's this, the car's worth this, so therefore the insurer can't total it. There's a lot of reasons in there that you can. There are ways to counter negotiate. They're not your ways. They're ways that the consumer would have to get involved with, but we're going to need some answers to some questions, whether it's first party or third party, and go through that. If you have one of these situations, if you're in our C20 group, you can always reach out to me. If you're not in our C20 group and you want to talk through one that's going on at your shop, well, then you can always get in touch with Melanie, just melanie@collisionhub.com. We have several different people who are adjusters that work here that can get on the phone and talk you through some things. If you need me, they can walk you through what it's like to get an appointment with me to go over a particular claim. I'm happy to do that and give you some different perspectives on things. Going to be pretty good week, right? We were frozen last week, iced in. Kids were out of school for 3 days. This week it's 70 degrees. So I plan on being out and about and out in the shop. I have not got to test the shoes. If you've been following us on Facebook, we're testing work shoes, and we've got 4 shops that volunteer that are testing those with us. So I need to get out and do my own test. And so I'll be out in the shop as much as I can be this week. If you need us, you can always reach us on the website. Or I always tell people the absolute smartest and most organized person within this company is Melanie. So you can reach out to her and she will get you in touch with whoever is best to help you. And have a great week. And we'll see you next Monday on Coffee Talk.